In this video, I'm explaining a solution how to secure the remote workforce. We are presenting how Microsoft Intune can be used to control the compliance of devices accessing resources over IPsec-based VPN. The solution here is based on a custom hotfix on top of R80.40 that is available to selected customers. The motivation for this project is the following. We want to achieve the same security for people in smart working as if they would be in the office. For this to happen, we need to have a solution that is benefiting the threat intelligence that we use for all other security solutions. And this is why we are using an integration to Microsoft Intune and to the Azure Active Directory for authentication and for compliance management to make it easier for customers to scale the solution and to integrate it into their existing environments. The scope of this solution is allowed to VPN clients on Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android to adhere to the Intune device and compliance management solution, and that access to applications over VPN is only allowed if the compliance state of the device is as configured in the policy. Windows and macOS VPN clients will use SAML-based authentication and thus supporting even multi-factor authentication methods defined, and the authorization to the resources is based on groups defined in the Azure Active Directory or in the on-premises structure. Note that in this documentation here I focus on Windows VPN clients and I perform the authorization based on groups defined in Microsoft Azure. The hotfix is available on request to selected customers. We want to look at the trust relationship of a scenario complex like this. So we do have VPN connections to the security gateway, and the gateway, of course, needs to have a certificate that is issued by an enterprise CA in order to avoid certificate warnings when a client connects to it. The identity provider that we are using here is the identity provider of Microsoft Azure. The identity provider that is configured on the management is using an application or service principal to communicate with the Microsoft Azure environment. And this service principal is used by the management server, and it is used by the gateway when the gateway is redirecting requests to this application for authorization and authentication. We are using a second enterprise application and service principal to learn assets such as applications, users, devices, everything that is learned and existing in Microsoft Azure Active Directory. We can learn over the CloudGuard connector and import it and keep it updated in the management server. And for that we have a second dedicated application. Users and their devices are of course present in the Microsoft Azure environment. They can of course even be imported and synchronized from an on-premises Active Directory. The compliance policy for these users and devices and groups is defined in the Intune environment. In order to have mobile devices and their users connecting to the solution, we have the requirement for Microsoft Intune that is certificates need to be known on the devices, and these certificates needs to be enrolled using a SCAP service. This is currently not covered in this presentation. Once the device is enrolled and known in Microsoft Intune, it will connect, it will authenticate using SAML. We will have a compliancy check being performed by Intune, and in case the compliance is okay, Microsoft Azure will issue a SAML token. The SAML token will then be used to have access, and then based on the access role, on the user's identity, access inside the network is controlled until applications can be reached. The lab where this documentation is based on was built in Microsoft Azure, based on a simple single gateway, one management server, a simplified configuration for packet forwarding in Microsoft Azure, and one group defined in Azure. In there we had users and devices, and a device compliance policy in Microsoft Intune. The configuration phases have been that I start to configure the integration to Azure to learn the assets, then the SAML authentication, then I documented some generic notes about the gateway configuration, how devices can get registered to Microsoft Intune and Active Directory. The devices then have been enrolled to the Intune service, but before they must be known to Azure. And then I created a compliance policy and applied it to the devices already known to Microsoft Intune. And finally, there is a short documentation about the VPN client installation, and there is a dedicated video where you can see that a connection is only successful when the compliance state is in compliance. Okay, thank you for watching this.